question is coming in through the Discord server. And just a reminder to everybody, if you don't want to call in to ask your question, you can call in, you can type in our Discord server. So the first question is, if intellectual property were to be enforced properly, things like seeing, breathing, and etc. would need to have owners, but they are obviously dead. Would it be fair to say that the IP, the intellectual property, would then transfer to those who rediscovered it and have the IP flow to the oldest living person at any given moment? So I think this person's asking whether or not intellectual property has some sort of automatic genealogical inheritance. I think that's what the question's asking. Sulu, what's your take on that phrasing?
Yes, I mean, it does get a fair point against IP, namely that, well, if you truly can own an idea, then, can I own the idea of fire? That took some innovation to do. So then everybody's got to pay me dues if they want to cook their food, for instance. And then you can expand this even into things, as the questioner does. Like, well, I was the first guy who had the idea to take a step forward, or to move my arm, or to breathe, so on and so forth, which obviously would lead to the death of humanity. Now, I also get this question also gets another problem with IP. Like, let's say we really do take IP seriously. We think that ideas genuinely are property. Well, with any other form of property, it doesn't expire after like however many years. That's entirely arbitrary. If I own a house, I could pass that house down onto my children and their children's children, so on and so forth. Which indeed I've never heard like a good answer from the IP people, which isn't just complete post hoc. Like, well, that would clearly be bad. It's like, yes, it would clearly be bad, but it's already bad to a lesser extent when it does expire. Now, people do try to, pardon me, get around these problems. Like Ayn Rand, she believed in IP. She thought you could patent, you couldn't patent discoveries, but you could patent inventions. I believe those were her words. Now, it's not clear to me where the hell the line between those two things could possibly lie. Because, if I invent a new type of mousetrap, am I not just discovering some very specific fact about reality, that if I arrange the materials in this way, it'll make a better mousetrap? It seems entirely that you're going to have an arbitrary line here. So, yeah, I think the thrust of the question is correct. So, what do our guest hosts think of this one?
I can give my opinion. I mean, I think kind of when you treat intellectual property as real property, I think we kind of have to take along with that all of the suppositions that come with real property. So to get it like the second part of the question, like, could you if someone died with an idea in their quote unquote property, and then if someone else rediscovered that idea, would it be theirs? Well, it seems to me that would be some sort of abandoned property. If someone dies with a house and they don't know a single person in the world, no descendants or anything like that, it would probably become some sort of abandoned property. And I think probably the same thing would happen with ideas, but I mean, it does just seem like I'm trying to, contort one idea into the hole that it's not really supposed to belong in. It's like treating something that's not legitimate property as real property and kind of trying to fit it into that hole. So I'm not exactly sure if my answer is completely consistent, but just immediately evaluating it, that's what it seems like it might be to me.
Perfect. I think that was a great answer from both Zulu and Econ. Floppa, why don't you tie this up with a nice pretty bow for us? Floppa may be currently sailing around the sea. It sounded like a ship's mast adjusting position. So why don't we move on to the next question? Because I think that we maybe actually gave that question all the attention it needed. And we'll start with Floppa on the next question. So the next question is, I think, wow, this is a great question. Floppa, are you with us, Floppa?
Oh, hello?
Hello. No, yes, sir. Everything is good. Just wanted to make sure.
Sorry.
So here's a new question, and this one's for you, based if true. What can we do in our everyday lives to advocate and bring about liberty?
So, wow. Okay, these are really open-ended. So, I mean, in general, okay, wow. I'm
try to remember for this question. Just take it in terms of what do you personally think, rather than there being like some objectively right answer about how we should approach this. What's your recommendation?
Okay, well, I think the enforcement to prevent others to impede on your liberty is pretty important. So I would say like doing the most that you can to make sure that others can't infringe on you, like getting guns or at least for your personal property, like just providing any sort of defense or If you do happen to end up in a conflict, that you have a lot of means to prove that you are not the aggressor of that conflict. So getting security cameras and such. Um, that's I guess more or less what I would say on the most personal level of it. Uh, I'm sure there's other things you could say, but that's just my immediate reaction to that.
Sure. I think that is something that's actually really important to have a spotlight put on it that people often overlook, which is not only the things that would improve the configuration of society, but things that we should be doing in our everyday lives, even in a state of society, like making sure that our property is adequately surveilled and protected and bordered. And I think, to steal some phrasing from Zulu here, that it's we've got objectively ascertainable borders around what we own and what we don't own. Anarcho Econ, what do you think about this question? It's a very open-ended, personal question. I think, what can we do in our everyday lives to advocate and bring about liberty?
I think for me, one thing I'm trying to focus on more is not really shying away from the ideas I have. I live in America, and I'm sure most of you guys are familiar. Pretty much every major developed country in the West is pretty much taken over by a lot of very socialist ideas, and I feel like a lot of that time it can be kind of oppressive to us, where it's like I have these very anti-socialist beliefs, but I'm trying to not be as afraid of professing my beliefs clearly and preaching the radical message, as Zulu would say. So I mean that's about all I really have to say on that.
Perfect. And Zulu, why don't you take a crack at that question? And then we got a wonderful super chat here, and we can go right into the super chat.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to have strategic discipline to whatever degree you are involved in it. Obviously, not everybody can specialize in the task of trying to advocate for liberty. You can be on like a less involved rung, and that's perfectly fine. But you've got to still maintain strategic discipline. That means you're not shying away from the ideas, as Anarcho Econ was saying. You're not, trying to bring down the thinking and couch it in a way that will be more acceptable. You just openly and honestly say, "Yep, this is what I believe. What are you going to do about it?" And you might not have an auditorium to say that to, but you can still gather the remnant within your own personal life, and it'll be even a benefit to you if you do. Find those people around you who are like-minded. That's going to be far more enjoyable to spend time talking to them than somebody who despises you and wants you dead.
Perfect. Let's take a quick opportunity here to check out this super chat. So, do you think hiring will be easier in an anarcho-capitalist society, and how could one thrive in such a society? And actually, before we jump into that, I just want to add something onto the end of what Zulu said there for everyone to hear. What Zulu is talking about there, not everyone can specialize into advocating for liberty, is a very important concept. But I think that, like Zulu, for every thousands of people that Zulu reaches with his message, it's all for nothing if the people who are receiving the message aren't manifesting it in their personal lives. And obviously that means not, violating other people's rights in your own action. But I think it also means advocating to your neighbors and your friends and your family, not necessarily preaching to them, but just being an exemplar that there's a better way of living in a society. So I think that there's two prongs of what's important here. So even if you come to the realization that you can't be an advocate of liberty, maybe on the scale that you would have aspired to, it's every bit as important that you are participating in the movement in your own life. So I think it's two sides of the same coin, and each equally necessary. So sorry for the tangent there, Zulu. How should we deal with this? Super
may I
chat
say
about
one
hiring?
thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the awesome things about owning a YouTube channel, and is that you can just from your own bedroom reach so many people. Like I discovered Mentis Wave first, and then I discovered Tax Brass, and then I discovered Zulu, and there's probably one other person I'm forgetting, and they led me to the avenue of reading Hop, Mises, and Rothbard, and going down that whole rabbit hole. So if it wasn't for you guys having the platform to do it on, I probably wouldn't be in the place I am right now. So it's awesome.
I love to hear it. Well, with all that optimism overflowing, we have no choice now but to possibly say something. Oh, wait, no. It's ancap. We have another positive thing to say. What do you think about hiring and how hiring will be easier in an anarcho-capitalist society? Well, I'll get us started on this. I just want to say that an anarcho-capitalist society is one where you're going to have the biggest reduction on the scarcity that we're experiencing. And by having such a big reduction in scarcity, you can expect hiring would be a lot easier in some ways and a lot harder in other ways. But overall, you're better off one way or the other. Zulu, why don't you take that and give the people what they really need, some specificity?
Yeah, I mean, really concretely, there are many regulations that are just directly in opposition. Just this directly, I believe it's called triangular intervention, where the employer and the employee, they want to make some sort of a contract here where the employee will do some manner of job for compensation. And then the state just comes in and says, isn't there someone you forgot to ask? Us, right? We don't consent, even though we're not involved in this. All manner of licensing restrictions, minimum wage in its own way is making it so that there's a whole class of jobs that you can't do if you're less productive than the minimum wage. So those people could get hired easier. And also, in general, the society is going to be far, far, far more prosperous. So if you want, you can be far more efficient in your work. Now, this is not to say we shouldn't be biting the implicit premise that sometimes people have that higher employment is necessarily better. Because I'll tell you, we used to have a society where every single man, woman, and child were employed. It was called the Bronze Age. Right? Everybody had to be contributing there. You couldn't have like a slacker. You couldn't have somebody who has time off or anything like that. You're fully employed the whole time. Right? It is, in fact, as a society gets more prosperous, it becomes possible for some people to be unemployed for a period of time without dying, in effect, which is exactly what happened. And so that answers the second question there: how to thrive as a society. Well, you would be far more capable of thriving because everybody would be far more productive, because there'd be a much greater capital structure. So everybody's labor would be vastly more productive of values. So everybody thrives far more than the other alternative.
Perfect. And I think this is a really interesting question to hear from you guys too. So, Anarcho, what do you think about this question that we're hearing about concerning what are your expectations for the experience of being in the job market in an anarcho-capitalist society?
Well, personally, I suspect that it's kind of a situation where, if you come into a society or you're born in a society and you want to be productive and you're truly, you're a rational, productive guy and you're trying to be an upstanding citizen, I think it would be incredibly easy for you to find any sort of employment, really. I mean, you could just go to some company and say, I'll work for like $3 an hour if you have no experience. And since there's no minimum wage, I suspect unless you were like, operating some machinery that you can break or something like that, they'd probably let you on just to have an extra hand on board. But I mean, if you're like you're some sort of crook or you're someone who, wants handouts, I mean, I'll bite the bullet that I don't think you'd do very well. I mean, you'd probably do exceedingly bad, actually, and you'd probably be much more comfortable in our modern kind of Western countries. But, again, if you're someone who really wants to, pull yourself up from your bootstraps or you're something like that, I think you're going to do very well. So, yeah.
Great. But I want everyone to know we have some callers in the queue. Very exciting. We're going to get to them right after this. Floppa, what's your take on the forecast of being a job seeker in an ancap society?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of state apparatuses that, act as artificial barriers to prevent you from doing certain jobs. Like if I want to be a mechanic, technically I would need I think some sort of like license in order to pass off whatever state regulations would be necessary for your car to drive on the road. So, I believe it'd be like there's Zulu talks about like the known and the unknown. So because we've lived in, sort of this modern society with all these laws, it's really, I'm just extremely optimistic that there would be so many ways that you could develop some scarce and demonstrable not demonstrable, but demonstrable skill, to provide to your community in whatever way. Like there's probably possibilities out there that we just don't know because of all these, I guess, barrier, like I said, the artificial barriers. I probably could have said that a little better, but that's pretty much my response.
I think it's very exciting to think about all the opportunities that would sort of blossom, not only more of the opportunities that we already know of, but how many new things would exist in a free society with so much less scarcity holding us back. Guys, those are some great answers. We're going to move on to our first call now. This is call number 1. And this is from Soren. So I'm going to bring Soren up and introduce the question that Soren has for us. And I think I'm going to hand it first to Anarcho-Econ and then Floppa, and we'll see if we can work around that way. But if the conversation's going a little bit more flowy, then we'll work with that too. Hello, Soren, you're on the air. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. So as I understand it, your question is, or sort of your challenge is, we title ourselves anarcho-capitalists, but capitalism has an inherent power structure which is incompatible with anarchism. So it's the case that anarcho-capitalism, these things are contradictory to each other. Is that the gist, or would you like to put it in your own words?
Yeah, so if I put it in my own words, I think it'd be better. So anarchism is from what I understand it is a stateless society, a stateless and classless society. And when you introduce capitalism to it, you obviously have two classes: the people who own the means of production and the workers. And, in my opinion, you can't just really slap the label of anarchism onto an ideology that, doesn't really adhere to it.
Sure. I think that's a fair critique. And I want everyone to know, I think this specific topic where there's tension between libertarians and Marxists in the broadest possible sense, Soren, not necessarily putting you in the Marxist box, but, this kind of language we're using, I think that's where the arena it most often comes up. I think for both the Marxist and the libertarian, it's so useful to have these conversations and iron out the way we communicate about it, because there's a lot of semantics here, but there's still a lot of logic too. So it's a great exercise. Anarcho-Econ, I think you heard the question. How about you begin for us?
Well, I just generally say that I don't think it's best to understand anarchy as this particular end goal of like we have this society with a state or without a state, and then there's none of these classes or hierarchies. I don't think it's the specific end goal. I think it's more seen as a rejection of legal authoritarianism or a rejection of rulers. But a ruler is best understood as some sort of agent or king imposing some sort of law upon the unconsenting citizens. And I mean, I think if you understand it like that, you'd come to a completely different conclusion. But I mean, indeed, if you understand anarchy to be some sort of hierarchy-less society, then capitalism is entirely incompatible with that. But I mean, this is going to come down to how we understand what anarchism actually is. And I mean, quite frankly, I'm getting a lot of this from Liquid Zulu, so I think that would probably be the best person to send this question at next, to be honest.
Yeah, you got you read my mind, and you looked at what I was typing down, and you took it. God damn you! But yeah, no. So to expand on that, yeah, we don't we're not making claims about like, well, this is the particular type of society we want, where it's stateless, classless, and yeah, it is